listening to the guys, they're all over the place. They're kind of genreless, if you will. Like they do a little bit of jazz, like a little bit of rock fusion. But this one really stood out to me. Is like they were really saying something with this track, and like that hit me at the time. I think it was like early January 2020. So nothing really civil rights stuff. Like we hadn't had any George Floyd stuff yet, but of course, living in America, like this is kind of our history. Like we see that stuff all the time on the news, right? So I sat down, I heard that one. The band already had some like kind of semblance of an idea already. They had this kind of core idea of like the role reversal, if you will, like seeing a white person kind of go through these same struggles that a black person goes through on the day-to-day. And I was like, oh man, that's a fun concept. It's cathartic, but like we could do a lot with that. So like going from there, I immediately listening to the song, I was like, oh, it's got to be black and white, right? Kind of illustrating that contrast between like the two different perspectives that we're like talking about here, within this country at least. So we'd kind of had the black and white thing. I said, we know we want to do the role reversal, but it felt like it was kind of like missing a kind of glue or like an extra texture to it, if you will. So talking to my partner and director of photography, Sam Salcedo, we started throwing around the idea that maybe we could incorporate some like archival footage or like different footage from protests and stuff like that to kind of bring that almost documentary, almost like, cinema veritas like element to it, if you will, just to kind of like bring it back into the real world a little bit. But I think that final piece, once we saw that, we were like, okay, cool. This feels like a cool way of connecting like, some of the stories and the history that I had read about in school and heard from my dad to like, okay, here's the art we're doing nowadays, if you will. Yeah, I feel really fortunate to be an alumni at Indie Film Fest. We were lucky enough to get a previous video I had done with The Color 8 into the first year of Indie Film Fest. That was our music video for Raw. That was a kind of funny experience because I wasn't originally aware that we got into Indie Film Fest. I think I kind of found out after the fact, but me, the band, we were all really stoked when we got in that first year because it felt very gratifying. Like me coming kind of fresh out of school, that was like the first kind of bit of recognition I gotten outside of like professors and peers and stuff like that. So to have something, a project where it kind of felt like we were flying by the seat of our pants so much, it was very indie, very minimal budget. The guys kind of hit me up a little late in the game, but we just did whatever we could to make it work. To get that kind of recognition at Indie Film Fest that first year, that was really cool, and I think that kind of lit a fire under all of our butts to kind of keep going. Hey, we're on the right track, like keep it up. I know not working with a lot of crazy resources or budget yet, but like something works here, right? So to kind of have a project where we're all a little more polished, I think, and a little more practiced, to end up at Indie Film Fest again, I think it means a lot to not just me, but the band and everyone who worked on the project, because it's like, all right, we're doing something right. You know what I mean? Let's stick with this and let's continue kicking out the jams.